I'm not a hadith rejector, but I don't believe that hadith are authoritative like the Quran. One thing I want you to notice actually is when people talk about rejecting hadith, see the word reject, you reject, rejection. It's a very strong word. The other word you can use is say, you don't accept this hadith. See the difference? Reject, don't accept. When you reject something that is from the religion. That's what you're implying. That's actually from the religion and you reject it. I don't accept means that I don't accept it as part of the religion. So there's two different ways that you can actually word it, and it has two totally opposite meanings. This is something that I want people to be aware of. When people say, oh, you reject. Can we say that a hadith is equivalent to the Prophet ﷺ being with us and speaking to us and we getting instructions from him? Obviously not. It's a world apart. This does not equate to that. Some people do equate it. They say it's a second source of wahi. And if you reject it, you reject the deen. And they can quote hadith. See the circular reasoning. They quote hadith to prove that hadith are revelation. I say that traditional Islam has a lot to do with it. Because when you have one extreme of just blindly accepting hadith, naturally you're going to get the other extreme, which is complete rejection. Personally, me, I try to go in between this. This is my stance. I don't consider them wahi, nor do I consider them authoritative like the Quran, but I don't reject them. It's part of our history. But I always try to look at connections. So if I find a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ, for example, is being described as Al-Quran, kana khulquhu Al-Quran, for example, or a walking Quran. If I find hadiths like this, and I look at the Quran and say, well, innaka la'ala khuluqin azim, or for example, innaka ala siratin mustaqim, wa yahdiyaka siratan mustaqima, and he guides you on the straight path or towards the straight path. So I read these things and it conforms. Everything the Prophet ﷺ did was from the Quran. And that's actually the greatest sunnah. If you want to talk about the sunnah of the Prophet ﷺ, the greatest sunnah is the Quran itself. Every injunction, every prohibition, command, all this was followed by the Prophet ﷺ in the best way. And he's a uswatun hasana. He's a great example for us all. It's very clear. And this source is 100% authentic. So this sunnah actually is a neglected sunnah. Unfortunately, we concentrate more on riwayat than we do on the Quran itself. And this is why the Prophet ﷺ actually, on Yawm al-Qiyamah, it's mentioned even. It's a prophecy that will happen. وَقَالَ الرَّسُولُ يَا رَبِّي إِنَّ قَوْمِ اتَّخَذُوا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ مَهْجُورًا. Verily my people have taken this Quran mahjura. They've taken it as something that is left off, that is neglected. The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wasallam says in a Sahih Hadith, and it could even reach mutawatir based on how many of the Sahaba said it and the variations of it, which is man kadhaba alayya muta'ammidan fayatabawwa maq'adahu min an-nar. He who lies about me, let him take his place in hellfire. So this should be the basis of how we accept hadith. Usually how it's done is you accept every hadith until you see some weakness, then you reject it. Just to find a reason to reject it. It should be the other way around. We should be skeptical of hadith until we find a reason to accept it. This is how it should be. Because we don't want to lie against the Prophet. And in fact, it's a lie against Allah. If we say the Prophet said something that he didn't say, then we're actually attributing something to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And what does Allah say in the Quran? وَمَنْ أَظْلَمُ مِمَّنْ اِفْتَرَى عَلَى اللَّهِ الْكَذِبِ. Who is more unjust than one who invents a lie against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? In other words, there is no one more unjust. If we're going to attribute revelation, and there is an element of doubt to it, we should be worried. We have the Shia and the Sunnis praying almost the same way. So that is a big sign that it was actually preserved. What scholars call al-Sunnah al-Amaliyya, which is the Sunnah of practice that reached us generation after generation. And then comes the question, why do you accept our hadith from our sect, but not the other sect? So it's not just a matter of the Prophet saying it or not saying it. It's which sect, which group of scholars we accept as an authority. Most Sunni Muslims consider Shia as Muslims. Now, obviously, they don't say they're rightly guided, but they consider them as Muslims, despite them rejecting their own hadith. The Shia reject Sunni hadith, and Sunnis reject Shia hadith, but they're still Muslims. So, if you do reject hadith, you can still be a Muslim.
Assalamu alaikum. If you would like to access our free courses and download our study material, you can register at QuranicArabicOnline.com to begin your journey to understanding the language of the Quran.